All right, so let us begin.
Okay.
So today I have the honor to be here with Mrs. Robinson. My name is Adolfho Romero, and I'm here on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Today is June 10, 2022. And just to have a conversation with you, Mrs. Robinson, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where were you born? How many siblings did you have? And yeah, just tell me a little bit about your parents. What did they do?
Okay. Well, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, 1954, towards the end of my dad's career. There were 4 children. Okay. The oldest, my sister Joyce, then 2 brothers, Sylvester and John, and then myself. And we just lived in a neighborhood considered uptown New Orleans, Carrollton section of town. Everything in New Orleans is a parish, you know, so we were in Orleans Parish. And just a normal childhood, you know. I didn't experience a lot of the baseball activity, if you will. My 2 older siblings were born when my dad was playing ball. And the other 2 of us, you know, came along a little later.
Okay, perfect. Do you remember any of the stories your father telling you during his baseball days?
That has always been a bit of a contention situation because Dad never talked about it. I could talk to him one-on-one and ask him a specific question, and he would, you know, answer it just pretty much 1 or 2 word answer. Baseball was kind of like, it's like he pushed it to the back.
Okay.
Of his life, you know, and moved on. So many of his coworkers didn't even know he had ever played ball. So I ended up having to interview relatives, older siblings, you know, cousins, people that grew up in the neighborhood to find out a little bit more about the time. You know, when I came along, he played a little baseball, but I was so young.
Right.
I didn't actually remember a lot of that.
Okay. Do you have any recollection or maybe stories that he would tell regarding the Great Lakes Naval Station when he was in the military? Do you know how he came to go into the military? Was it a draft or?
Well, you know, the difference, I guess, between him and Jackie is Jackie was newlywed. My dad was already married. You know, my parents were married. The 2 older children were born. So he had gone into the service pretty much after he played a little bit of ball in New Orleans. And for him, that was a good fit. You know, he didn't talk a lot about the team, though, but I have pictures that I cherish of the Naval Academy because they did this beautiful 8x10 of them in their baseball uniform and then another one in the exact same position in their naval uniforms. And it's a beautiful picture of the team.
That sounds beautiful. Great for the...
I think that's where the Homestead Grays spotted him. You know, when he was playing ball for the Navy.
Okay. Do you know what position or what did he do in the military? And within the military, what was his job or?
You know, I don't. I have his honorable discharge papers, but I don't remember seeing what, you know, his stage was. Now, you're going to make me look for that now.
Yeah, no,
I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were curious too, just thinking about that while coming in.
Yeah.
You know, during those times while he was playing baseball, the 40s, late 40s, we do know, you know, integration was very barely beginning to happen within the games. Mm-hmm. And, you know, at that time we had Jim Crow era, we had segregation going on in the groups. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to see if you have any recollection around what was going on with him at those times, you know? Where was he staying when he was arriving, maybe even to Daytona? Would he stay with family, friends, or with the team, or...
They actually, because Daytona is the hub of Montreal and their training camp. So prior to that, having played with only Negro League teams, it was a little bit different from the barnstorming that they did. They were actually assigned to certain homes. And I just found out yesterday that Wendell Smith, who is in many of the articles, he was a reporter for the Pittsburgh Courier during that time. I just found out yesterday that not only did the team hire him, to report the games and travel with them, they also hired him to chauffeur my dad and Jackie Robinson around because they were limited to where they could go, once they got here. So they stayed in specific homes assigned to them for their own safety.
Okay. From what I've noticed, or at least the research that I've done, I know that your mother wouldn't come with Mr. Wright's over here to the games or to the training sessions. Mm-hmm. She would still be in New Orleans. How did that impact the relationship? Being far away from each other? Yeah,
I have found letters in my dad's personal belongings. Pretty much like love letters, typical letters you would find. They made it through that point. They eventually divorced, but I was a child when that happened. But they made it through, because she had the children, and that was the main reason that she didn't travel with them,
Okay.
That was the difference,
All right. A question that I did have. I know even almost towards the end of his career, he also traveled to other countries like Quebec, Latin America, where he joined other teams. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I'm so excited to start the research on that. I have several newspaper articles, clippings that he kept. Unbeknownst to me, we found those, and I've been translating little by little those articles, because some of them I can't determine exactly where he was, but he did play Puerto Rico, he played the Dominican Republic, and he played in Venezuela. But that was under winter ball. Yeah, that's what that was called, winter ball. So to keep the checks coming, that's what many of the Negro Leaguers did. They would play winter ball.
Okay. My next question would be, what do you remember, if you could describe your father, what would you describe him as? What would be, I know you're his daughter, maybe it's a little bit different than the average person asking that question, but who was your father for you?
My dad was the coolest guy you ever want to meet. He was just cool. His favorite word was copacetic. You're probably too young to remember that, that hip phrase that they used back then. But he was just laid back, soft-spoken. Door was always open, because at this point now, I'm going between my mom's residence and my dad's residence. But my dad was always with house full of people, food, libations, but he was just so laid back, I've never seen my dad angry. I have never seen him angry. I'm sure he got angry, but I never saw that side of it.
Did he ever spoke to you about the racial tensions that existed during his time playing and going to different areas and towns, and how did he deal with that?
He talked a little bit about the fact that they did the barnstorming, but he's the type of person that he didn't dwell on the negative. It was basically a job, a paycheck for him. And, I realized that they had to stay in buses when they couldn't find other places to stay. And I realized that from all of my research. But that was one thing he never really just dwelled on. I don't think it impacted him as much as his need to play. He had been playing baseball since high school. So for him, it was the love of the game, I think, more so.
Do you know for him where did it all began? Why baseball? Who got him involved into baseball?
I honestly don't know. I just know that he started it in school, and I wish I did know. Being the last child has made it difficult for me to reflect back on some things, because Daddy died in 1990. Right. My older brother has shared with me how some of the other names that we do know used to come by the house when they come to town, and they'd stay with my parents. I wasn't around for any of that. But it was a tight-knit community, very tight-knit. And I guess they had to be, because for safety reasons, it was just a sign of the times,
Right. Okay. Let's see. So I guess one of the questions I have, going from baseball leagues, being on the top of the top in the leagues, and then moving on after his retirement, spending his next couple decades working afterwards at the National Gemstone Company. How did that impacted him? Did you saw like any difference in behavior? Was it positive, or more time for the family, I guess? But what did you see? How did
it didn't impact him, as far as I could tell. Honestly, if we backtrack a little bit,
okay,
when he and Jackie were signed with Montreal, they were, from what I'm told, initially was supposed to be signed at the same time.
Right.
And because of the era, not to have too much political backlash and what have you, they signed Jackie that November, and then my dad January 29th of 46. And what people don't know is that even after my dad left Montreal, when he was sent back to the minor team, he went back to the Homestead Grays. He played for several teams, actually.
Right.
But the Homestead Grays was that main one that he kept going back to. And they won quite a number of championships, after that. So I think people kind of have the perception that after Dad, was moved from Montreal, that he just kind of disappeared. And that has been my biggest contention, to correct history. He didn't just disappear. He continued to play ball for quite a long time.
I think you are absolutely correct, and you actually got one of my questions right there. That's exactly what I was going to ask. That was one of the Negro Leagues baseball, like biggest leagues, especially in the 46, early 50s. So he was like at the peak of the height, even of the leagues.
Right.
Can you tell me how was that relationship with his teammates in that team? Because it seems a little bit different than being in the other leagues.
Yeah, they actually, I think because these guys saw each other all the time, so many of them moved, so no matter what team, even when Jackie Robinson put his little team together, All-Stars, I believe they were called, these guys already knew each other. So they were comfortable playing with each other. And even when he went to winter ball, I think there was only one dispute ever mentioned because he had played all the way through and they were about to go into that last championship and he pulled out because of a salary dispute. So, his baseball career just continued, but it looked a little different, from some other people's careers,
Right.
Some people moved on. I think that perhaps he may have thought the Dodgers might call him back. I would think, just thinking back that perhaps he thought maybe they would, but he moved on.
Okay.
He continued to work. Now, when he got to National Gemstone, after his career ended, and stayed there, and they loved him there, but none of them ever knew he played ball.
Right. That's, right. It's like a whole different identity almost.
That's a whole different identity. I've learned over this entire period of research that he had even used another name one time. We were trying to figure out what it was. It was a name like Leftowich. I can't remember the first name. And everybody knew who he was. That's the joke of it. But he may have done it because he was between two teams. And maybe he was still in a season with one. And just to get on, the lineup. Who knows? There's I'm sure many stories to be told. And I wish he was here to share this.
Right.
I
guess my question would be now is like, he broke the color barrier during that time frame. Mm-hmm. So did he ever talk about that? Like what it meant, like for him to be one of the first individuals to do that in a worldwide watched view sport?
Yeah, it was huge. It was difficult, though. The backgrounds, I think, had something to do with that. Jackie, of course, college educated, newly married. Dad's scenario was a little bit different. So I think that the fact that I would share it with my children and my grandchildren, you know, I think those are the things that meant more to him, the four of us sharing and passing that on. Because when I grew up, I heard that my dad had played baseball. I didn't know anything about it. I had never seen any pictures of anything. But when I got older, like towards high school, I started just Googling things. I was like, okay, now you can look up things.
Right.
And I would actually see that there was a record. But since as an adult and seeking further into it, I have contacted the Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. Good feedback there. I have contacted Major League Baseball. Good feedback there. I mean, they sent me, I want to say 85 articles that they had on file. I didn't know Major League Baseball tracked Negro Leaguers, you know, that way. But everybody has been in this journey, this research, everybody's been so helpful, you know, and Daytona, it's just a blessing to be here. Because yesterday I stood on the ground that my daddy stood on, and that meant a lot. You know, that meant a whole lot. We walked out to where the field was, and I was able to stand there and just take it in, you know. But Daddy, he never elaborated on a lot of things, but you could tell he was proud when his children and grandchildren would talk about his journey with baseball. And finding things that I have found over, you know, the period of time has enlightened me so much to the times. There are Western Union messages indicating what their salaries were back then. I could only shake my head. Letters where he's talking to my mom, you know, I can send you $50, you know, today, that type of thing. So I know it was a struggle for them being away from home. There were things that he would ask for in advance in a salary when he went to a new team so he could send back to his family. So I can only imagine, you know, right. I can only imagine. But I try to stay focused on what he did, you know, that has not been recognized. And so many of the articles that I've read over the years that have been done locally and otherwise, they always start off with like the unknown player or the forgotten number 2 or, you know, and I'm like, how can he be forgotten? They were there together, you know, how do you kind of skip over that part of history? So.
Right. Okay. One of the questions I had, how did your father shape the way that you are today?
You know, my dad was a bit of a character. You know, as laid back as he was, he has made me look at history in a different light. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be doing any of this, you know. He's made me research so many more things other than the Negro Leagues just because of the role that he played. It's like, how many other things are we missing? How many other things have been skipped over? When I was in high school, they didn't even teach, you know, Black history. Right. So for that, I can thank him. You know, he's opened my eyes to a lot of things. You know, he was just an affectionate person, but a quiet man, you know, very quiet. And I wish I could have gotten so much more out of him about his story, but researchers have truly helped me, and I'm blessed for that, you know. But I just I keep trying to learn that personal side, and as things come to me, you know, I have to jot them down because I'm like, wow, I remember that, you know?
Right. Okay, and right now, today we're here. Can you tell me a little bit, are you involved in any organizations or do you do any type of activism or anything like that on that end?
I have not done a whole lot of activism, but I was working mainly with the unions. When I was working, I'm retired now. I was a union rep, for my job because there's just so much. You'd be surprised at how much needs to be done. So with that, of course, we would knock on doors and encourage voting and what have you, as well as trying to resolve disputes. And the other organizations basically have been with my church and, ladies' organizations, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any daughters, children? Or
I have two sons.
two sons. Are they as involved with you, like within baseball, like the way that you're doing research about your father, or they're on their own pathways?
They actually found the groups that I'm in on Facebook because I've never done a lot of social media, and my sons found the historical Negro League groups and fans of Negro League groups. They winter ball, groups, Negro League players in winter ball, and for that, that has expanded my research so much.
Wow.
Oh my God, the people that have found me, this organization found me through Facebook. Josh McCain, who was originally here as the community, director, is the one that located me, and we connected. And as much as I've always wanted to come to Daytona, I had never had a reason to just come. I had no contacts. And so because of the Tortugas, I'm here,
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience now coming back to on this trip, coming back here, and how has it been? You were telling me a little bit about the old Kelly baseball field and what's going to happen in the nearby future. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, the organization that I met with that was working on that project is, the acronym is SABR, S-A-B-R, the Society for American Baseball Research. And SABR is a huge organization across the country, and they actually have been a great source for me for information. There were things that I could ask them, like I would be asking my family, and they will research and come back. But SABR has been around quite a number of years. So they're the ones that invited me. They gave me the address to Kelly Field. And then once we went there and kind of toured around the area, they showed me what the plaque would look like, that it told me it had been approved, and I was so excited about that. And where they're going to place it. Because they've built this building in front of the field now, and so they're going to place it towards the street so people can actually see it.
Good.
So that unveiling is what I'm looking forward to coming back.
Perfect. And just almost final question, second to last question. Can you tell me a little bit about the New Orleans Hall of Fame? I know there's been a lot of trying to get the name out there and put the legacy behind, but out in the open. But now you mentioned that they're moving forward with that, New Orleans?
Yes, they voted in this year 6 inductees, and of course that was one of those. And they are doing that at the end of July in New Orleans. It's the All-State Sugar Bowl Sports Hall of Fame. And they, like any Hall of Fame, now they're doing coaches as well as other sports. They've continuously added, like the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, for example, they've added things over the years like golf and other things that weren't previously in there. So they're going to have this in New Orleans, and it's going to be an evening event. And they wanted to set up their presentation, so I had to send them some information, of course. And you receive your plaque and what have you. So I'm looking forward to that event.
All right. What do you think that would mean to the people in New Orleans?
I think that's going to open their eyes for those that didn't know. There are a few people around that still remember my dad, but I think that will bring more attention, and hopefully we're going to get him in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame as well. But New Orleans has never had a baseball team for a very long period of time. My hometown now, where I'm actually living, it would be the Houston Astros, and they're huge.
Astros are huge.
But New Orleans is just not that type of town. But I do believe this will bring some attention.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Robinson, I know the game's about to start soon over here, so we're going to conclude our interview for now. I want to thank you again for being here with us today and spending some of your time over here and sharing all this information about your father. And like I mentioned before, we are honored to be here today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate your taking the time to drive
Absolutely.
over here. I really do.
We'll do it again if we had to, okay?
All right.
And I hope to be here around, hopefully, during October season and see what happens, okay?
Great.
So we'll stay in touch, and it's been a pleasure being here today with you, okay?
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you.